Live from the Washington, D.C. area, all empowered citizens need to know about intelligent use of resources, smart governance, inclusive communities, smart industry, and healthy, thriving urbanization. This is Smart Sustainability, the TV talk about shaping a sustainable future in the digital age with Nicolette DeVidar. Good evening and welcome to Smart Sustainability. I'm Nicolette DeVidar. Thanks for joining us tonight as we're broadcasting live from Fairfax, Virginia on this Sunday, February 9. For those of you following us online, a warm welcome to you as well. You are what you eat is a statement that is anchored in many languages and cultures around the world. Food is much more than just calories and fuel for our bodies. It directly affects our health, well-being, our minds, longevity, and overall who we are. It also directly affects the communities we live in and the environment. How we eat and what we eat is a reflection of how connected we are to nature, and with this, how connected we are with ourselves. What is your relationship to food today? What is our collective relationship to food and food sources today? What do we know about growing food, what it needs, and what it takes? How healthy and sustainable is the food you consume? Do we have access to clean food, and is that access equal for all? What we can do, you, I, we collectively, as community, society, individuals, and businesses to build sustainable food networks that provide equal access to all for the challenging demands of the 21st century is we talk about tonight. With these guests, I have in the studio Matt Mulder, who's Director of Operations for Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture in Alexandria, Virginia. He's co-chair of the Fairfax Council's Food Access and Literacy Work Group. He spent the last 22 years on environmental and agricultural programs in the D.C. area. I also have Chelsea Roseberry, who is the Virginia Farmers Market Operations Manager for FreshFarms, where she oversees 11 farmers markets locations in Virginia. Chelsea also serves as co-chair on the Food Access Working Group for the Fairfax Food Council. She began her food journey during her environmental sustainability studies at George Mason University, where she learned about the direct link between human and environmental health. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks.
On Smart Sustainability. Food, obviously, is a very important topic, and so I do want to dive right in. We're going to start with the Food Access Working Group. What is the Food Access Working Group? You want to start, Matt?
Sure. So the Food Council began about 4 years ago now, I want to say, and it really came about to address the issues of food and food access and all the different components of the food system in Fairfax County. And so we broke into 3 working groups originally. One was gardens and then shifted to urban agriculture. And another was food literacy, so learning about where your food comes from and how do we talk to the public about it. And the last was food access, which was really about addressing barriers to access to fresh local food. It is a lot of work related to kind of communities and people who are unable to access fresh food or healthy food. So it's a group that meets once a month. We come together and we collectively bring our experiences and represent our own organizations or county governments, and we have some just local individuals who are really interested in the topics, and we discuss kind of methods that we can use to address issues related to food access in Fairfax County. So we talk about things like grocery stores and access to them, and recently we combined efforts with the food literacy group, and we talk about things like producing educational materials to help people shop at farmers markets and know about what's out there and the different programs that are available to them. So that's really what the group is primarily about. We don't do a lot of direct programming, but we try to support all the member groups and move the entire issue of food access forward in Fairfax County.
How large is the group?
So it ranges in size. We have about 35 people on our mailing list, and we've had meetings where we've had more than that show up, and we've had meetings in the summertime when sometimes it's a lot less when everybody's really busy. But
So
yeah,
can anyone show up?
anybody can show up if they visit the Food Council's Facebook page or the website, which I think you're going to share in a little at some point tonight. If they go there, they can see when the next meetings are, and yeah, we welcome anybody to come and participate.
That's very important for viewers to know also, so that they know that they can actually go there and attend those meetings.
Yep.
That's very, very good. So you're both on the same group, or
Yes.
those are different groups?
Yep.
How long have you been on the food access working group?
About
Chelsea?
3 years.
Oh,
not
okay.
not as co-chair though, but I've been on the group for about 3 years.
So what are the goals of the food access group?
Do you want to take this
that?
one?
Sure. So we have a lot of projects. I mean, our strength is our collaboration. So it's kind of whatever groups are willing to come to the table and work with us. For example, we have a lot of organizations focused on gleaning, which is where you go to the farmers market and collect produce. And so one project we worked on, for example, was connecting gleaners with our farmers markets. So a big strength of the food access group is just us being able to come together and collaborate on these issues where normally maybe transportation, we wouldn't talk to the transportation team about how we can help connect our grocery stores and farmers markets to transportation and kind of work on these bigger picture issues.
So when you say the transportation team, help me out here a little bit, understand how it's structured. So are these like individuals that just go there and
Totally.
join,
Like
and they
kind
work
of
in different areas, so different stakeholders?
Oh yeah, we've got a huge variety of stakeholders. We have churches, nonprofits, government agencies, the health department, Fairfax County Park Authority. So it's a really, just citizens, it's a really diverse group and lots of diverse voices, which is great.
So people can sign up for a specific group they want to participate or have an interest in and collaborate?
Yeah, they kind of bring, sometimes, a lot of times people bring their projects to our group, and we kind of figure out how we can connect them with the rest of our network and what we can do to kind of support their projects, rather than, like Matt said, we don't take on projects, we don't deliver anything specifically, well, a little bit, but it's mostly what our partner organizations, we can do collaboratively with them.
So partner organizations, how many partner organizations?
So like Fresh Farm is a partner organization, I'd say.
Arcadia
is a partner organization.
Okay.
Just anybody who comes and takes their time to, advance these issues. And specifically, we worked a lot on Snap at Market, which we offer a program where SNAP EBT customers, formerly food stamps, can come to the market and we'll actually double their money. So we've been working really hard to work collaboratively to promote that with different organizations, nonprofits, churches, just to get the word out into the community. And that wouldn't be possible without the Food Council.
So this is all through the food access group?
It is, yeah.
So people really need to go and check out the website.
We have a lot going on. Yeah.
Yes, because there's
We
a lot
do.
of stuff going on and a lot of programs, etc., that viewers can tune in and learn from.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So I also wanted to talk about your specific organization. So I know Arcadia, for example, offers a range of programs that educate and train people.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about what exactly those programs are.
So we have 4 big program areas. First is farm and nutrition education. So we do programs where we bring elementary school age kids out to the farm. We're located at Woodlawn Estate in kind of southeast Fairfax County. And we have a educational farm space and a production farm space, and we bring kids out and teach them about where their food comes from, teach them about nutrition, eating healthy, eating fresh food in season, that type of thing. We also operate a farm camp that's on the same site that happens during the summer months. If people are interested, the spaces are filling up already, but it's a great opportunity to kind of spend a week really being exposed to these topics. The other area we work in is food access. And it's really how I connected with the Food Council originally, and that's primarily handled through our mobile market program, where we collect and aggregate food from farmers within about an hour and a half to 2 hours of Washington, D.C. And we bring that food and we put it onto mobile box trucks, and we go into underserved communities, primarily in Washington, D.C. right now. And we do 10 market stops a week where we go in and we offer food at relatively low, affordable rates, and then we accept all the major kind of food benefit programs, so SNAP and WIC programs and different programs that exist. DC has a few more than Virginia does right now, and so that's one of the reasons the markets are a little more successful.
So you do both? You do DC and Virginia?
We have historically done Virginia. Right now we don't have a market stop in Virginia. The last one we did was in Bailey's Crossroads about 2 years ago. We are looking at possibly doing a farm stand, some other market opportunities, as well as a CSA program in Northern Virginia. But it's a program that just does a little bit better in Washington, D.C., just because of kind of more densely populated areas.
How long has this program been running in D.C.?
So we launched the mobile market program in 2012. And so we're entering our 8th season.
Did you see a projection? Like, what's the progress? Did it grow? How was
Absolutely.
it received? Did you have to do a lot of education to get people to that point?
Yes, to all of those things. The program started off really small our first year. Since then, we've grown, and we operate like a farmer's market, but our real goal is to build community capacity to support long-term permanent solutions in the community. So we get a community really engaged and start working with them so that a group like Fresh Farm can come in and put a permanent farmers market there that operates year after year. So we really go in, we have the flexibility. We treat it like a nonprofit program. So we spend a lot of time educating consumers about the food that we have and kind of reintroducing food, because these communities oftentimes have been ignored by farmers markets or just even to some extent food retail. And so really reintroducing some of these ideas about fresh local food.
That's great. I do want to pick up on this when we go in the second segment,
Sure.
but I do want to go to Chelsea also to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about Fresh Farm, particularly, like, what's the main focus? What do you do?
Sure. So Fresh Farm's a nonprofit, and their goal is to support sustainable agriculture in our region, and we do that by operating 33 farmers market locations. So we've got 11 in Virginia, including shout out to Mosaic, which is right around the corner from here. And we do our best to support farmers and kind of give them opportunity and direction in terms of like how they can grow and be more successssful. And then we have a number of other programs. We have a food prints program that operates mostly in DC right now. We're actually kind of new to Virginia, or at least Fairfax County. So it operates in DC, where they go into the schools and they teach kids about seasonal eating and let them taste things and kind of do little cooking demos with them. And so that's a really great program. And we also have a pop-up food hub that we operate in DC, where we offer low-cost CSA shares that, again, accept SNAP benefits and other benefits.
Yeah, there are also a lot of things we need to talk about. We're ready to already going into the break for the second segment, and when we come back, we continue our conversation, and you'll learn a ton more about sustainable food.
During high school, I hung with the wrong crowd, and I never graduated.
I helped Santiago in many different ways, like all fathers do, because he always wanted to go to college.
I felt a little embarrassed to come back to school, but eventually, once I came here, I knew that it's for a bigger goal.
He was very dedicated, hardworking. He connected with his teachers, he connected with other students. That was one of the key reasons why he was able to keep forging ahead.
It was amazing to see him graduate. This was one thing that meant so much to him, and of course, it meant so much to us too.
With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed. That support is everything.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Dad?
Just 1 minute, okay?
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out?
clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back to Smart Sustainability. We're going right into the second segment. I'm Nicolette DeVidar, and we continue our conversation tonight about sustainable food and how we can build access to sustainable food for all. So I'd like to go back in. We heard so much about the programs, so I do want to pick right back up on where we left about the programs. We stopped that you also go into schools and educate, so that's Fresh Farm. So people do not confuse the farmers market with Fresh Farm.
Yes, the program's called Food Prints.
Okay, and they can look it up on the website?
Yes, they can, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't know the link offhand.
You know, I think what we need to clarify for viewers is there's a lot of talk about sustainable food and different words, sustainable food and local food and organic. Let's talk about the differences. What is sustainable food, or what makes food sustainable? You want to go on this one?
Sure. So yeah, there's a lot of labels out there, I guess you could say, organic, certified naturally grown, but I feel strongly that what's really important is that farms are local and diversified. And when they're local and diversified, that means you don't have to use as many pesticides, chemicals, things are rotated more often, which kind of confuses pests. And the reason we say that is a lot of farms can be certified organic, but they're still a large industrial farm. They're still using the same practices, essentially, that a non-organic or a conventional farm would be using a lot of the time. So they're still using pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, maybe slightly different, but they're still using a lot of that. They're still depleting the soil because they're not necessarily rotating crops. They might, you know, if they're a strawberry farm, they're just going to plant tons of strawberries and use as much chemicals as it takes every year, and they're not going to, you know, rotate that strawberry patch necessarily. So yeah, that's.
But if I'm a consumer, how do I know when it says sustainable food? How do I know when there is a sustainable? What is a sustainable food?
Well, that's, I think, the beauty of the farmers market is you can actually go and talk to the farmer and say, hey, what are your practices? What do you use? What do you spray? If you're at a grocery store, though, for example, sure, the organic label is great, but there is an additional cost associated with that, getting that certification, because it costs the farmers more money to maintain that certification. And it's, again, it's better, it's a good, better, best situation, I think, because if you're getting it organic, if it's coming from the grocery store, it's having to go through a really long chain. It's not going to be as fresh. It was probably picked a while ago. So you tend to be better off just, you know, going straight to the farmer and getting it direct and kind of asking those questions you really care about.
But that really puts the onus then on the consumer to go and ask about if they spray pesticides or whatsoever, because there's no easy label that says, you know, just because it's local, that automatically means it's healthy food.
Yes, no, that's totally true. Most farmers at a farmer's market are, I wouldn't call them conventional, because they're able to use a lot less of all the inputs that you need for a farm, but they're definitely more sustainable. Like instead of spraying a whole, you know, because they have a huge field of strawberries, instead of having to spray a whole field of strawberries, they're able to just kind of spot spray if there's like an issue in one area rather than just coating the whole field.
Are there criteria for participants at farmers market to adhere to some minimum standards to make sure there is some sustainability to it?
The way we handle that, so all of our farmers First of all, we're a producer-only farmers market. If you've seen that term before, it just means that every farmer and producer has to grow or make from scratch everything they sell at market.
Is that verified?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. We go out and we visit all the farms and make sure that they're adhering to those standards. In terms of sustainability, we favor, it's a very competitive selection process to get into the markets, actually. It's not, you don't just come in. We have a balance we have to maintain. There's a lot that goes into it, you'd be surprised. And at this point, we are really looking for farmers that are using sustainable practices. So we kind of do it through a competitive, like it's through market competition, essentially, that we, like we don't say you can't use chemicals or anything like that, but we do look for vendors that use sustainable practices.
So there is some sort of, well, there's sort of a minimum standard where, you know, when you go there, you have, there are certain things that are just being met. You know, they're all produced, everything is produced on the farms. Yes.
There's no, you know, going to the auction and kind of picking up a bunch of stuff and then reselling it, or,
because farmers market, they have, well, it seems like they have experienced exponential growth in recent years in terms of different locations, particularly here in the area and where people visit.
Yeah, I mean, local food, organic food is definitely becoming more popular. You can see that in just the number of different grocery stores that now like to put, you know, farm fresh, local all over everything. And a lot of them are local and farm fresh, but there's a lot more, even though there's more interest and demand for local food, there's also more outlets for local food now, like other than the farmers market, I guess you could say. But the demand for farmers markets and local food is definitely growing.
Yep, that's right. Speaking of organic, so can people, when they come to Arcadia, do they learn about how to grow food organically?
Yes, but we go beyond that, I want to say. So in addition to the programs I mentioned earlier, we have a demonstration sustainable agriculture operation. We are not certified organic. That was a choice we made internally, primarily because the organic certification process is really only for market purposes in a lot of ways. We definitely adhere to what we consider a stronger standard than the organic standard.
What is that? Can you elaborate that a little bit?
Sure. When we talk about sustainable agriculture, organizationally, we talk about really having three aspects to it. One of it is it socially just, is it environmentally sound, and is it financially viable? So we talk about those three kind of pillars of sustainability. It's the financial side, the society side, and the environmental side. And when the organic standard was created and kind of managed and kind of the USDA took over certification, we think that it allowed for kind of large industrial agriculture, as Chelsea mentioned, to kind of come in and get certified in a way that I don't think it would have necessarily been previously. So we work and we demonstrate sustainable agriculture practices. We have a program where we work with veterans trying to find new careers at different points in their lives, and we actually train them to be sustainable farmers. And so we've had 77 people come through the program before this year. We just started a new class of 28, and our goal is to kind of train them in sustainable practices. We have a list of practices that we consider to be sustainable when it comes to their production methods. A lot of it overlaps with organic agriculture. Kind of similar, we talk about following the list of kind of approved chemicals if they're going to use chemicals, looking through different aspects. Organic agriculture has different aspects of the way they manage livestock operations, and some of those I think I prefer some of the more like certified humanely raised and some of those other labels to the organic label alone, just because I think when it comes to kind of the way animals are handled, I want to know that they were actually handled in a humane fashion as opposed to just what they were fed or what they were handled that way. And so, yeah, people can come to the farm and work with us. We have training programs. We actually offer, we're developing some new programs for the general public around organic gardening and sustainable gardening. And then we're also, we have volunteer opportunities on a monthly basis and to some extent on a weekly basis during the growing season where people can come and work with us and volunteer. And we try to make everything educational when they're there. But sometimes it's hard when you're mainly just pulling weeds. But we'll talk about why it's important and what what that means too.
That's right, and I participated in one of the
great.
programs that you had there as a volunteer, and I know there are actually several companies that give their employees some paid hours off so they can go and volunteer at different places. And I know at Arcadia, I mean, that's what we did.
Yeah, we try to have
good work there, and it was great. I mean, it was for bonding, it helped people connect and things like that. I was going to ask you on the veteran program, I know you gave us the numbers. How many years has this been in place?
So we started the program in 2015. The first, we do two training programs. One is a full-time on-the-job training program, and so because of finances, we're paying the people to be in the program. We can only do 2 or 3 a year, and so that started in 2015, and through that program so far we're starting 3 new people this year, and so that'll bring us up to about 9 people who have been through that program. The other program is a year-long program where we call it our reserve program. It's based on the idea of the military reserves. So we do 1 weekend a month, and they come in and they learn and work with us, and we do hands-on training, we do classroom training, we visit local farms and food businesses and teach them all about different parts of the food system where they could possibly land. We kind of see it as like our ultimate goal is to train people to become farmers and start their own farming businesses, but we also kind of realize that it's also a big success if somebody learns that maybe they don't want to farm full-time, but maybe they want to work with Chelsea, maybe they want to work at a farmer's market, maybe they want to work in a restaurant, or connecting local food to consumers.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, for the veterans, for example, do you have statistics on there that say, for example, how many veterans really do go and operate their own farms? And in this area, where would they go for land purposes, etc.?
Good question. There aren't a lot of great numbers nationally. Okay. So of the 77 people we've worked with, I think we've had 33 go on to actually start farming or working on a farm. Not all of those own their own businesses, but it's it's really good numbers and results for what we've done so far. Right. We think veterans are especially well equipped for agriculture.
Why?
It all comes down to kind of experience. They're used to working outside. They're used to working hard. Yeah. They're used to kind of putting in a long day and not being happy at the end of it. They're used to kind of following directions. They're really trainable as a whole. And I think there's a lot of veterans that kind of come back and don't want to work in a cubicle. So they come back to the area and they want to work outside. They want to get their hands dirty. And what we've found is that nationally there's been some research on it where farming is incredibly therapeutic for veterans. So if somebody comes in with TBI or PTSD, they're coming into these programs and there's a therapeutic aspect of getting their hands in the soil or working with animals. So it's been really rewarding in that regard too.
Yeah, I've heard about that one too, so that there's really a therapeutic aspect, which really would tie right back into what you said. There is a direct correlation between the health of a human being, the environment, and how it affects the entire community.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, when you look at, kind of the results of these big industrial farms, I mean, what are they doing? They're depleting our soil. So our soil is just washing away. I've heard like 30% a year or something.
And that's a huge problem.
That's a lot. Yeah, they're putting carbon into the air through, lots of methane being concentrated in factory equipment. Yes. And into our water, they're putting, herbicides and stuff.
Yeah, we continue our conversation. We're about ready to head into the break. When we come back, we'll talk about the challenges and the opportunities with sustainable food networks.
During high school, I hung with the wrong crowd and I never graduated.
I helped Santiago in many different ways, like all fathers do, because he always wanted to go to college.
I felt a little embarrassed to come back to school, but eventually once I came here, I knew that it's for a bigger goal.
He was very dedicated, hardworking. He connected with his teachers, he connected with other students. That was one of the key reasons why he was able to keep forging ahead.
It was amazing to see him graduate. This was one thing that meant so much to him, and of course, it meant so much to us too.
With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed. That support is everything.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Dad?
Just 1 minute, okay?
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back to Smart Sustainability, where we talk tonight about healthy access or access to healthy and sustainable food. And we continue our discussion right away. We talked a little bit about the difference between organic and sustainable and local, and I'm sure it's going to come out a little more as we go along. I have one more question that I really would like to know. What are components, healthy components to a sustainable food chain, like essential components of a sustainable food chain that we as consumers should be aware of, so we understand sort of what all goes into that?
I mean, it starts in a lot of ways. I think it all starts at the farm itself.
Okay.
So when we talk about agriculture, Chelsea mentioned earlier, it's really important that people know where their food's coming from. And either that needs to be done by the consumer themselves or some other organization like Fresh Farm or Arcadia. We certify that every farmer that we source from is producing in a sustainable fashion. And so that's one way that it makes it a little bit easier on the consumer to do that. And so I think that's a big part. I think education's a major part of a sustainable food system. The people need to know about food and where it comes from, because if they don't have any idea about how food is grown or how it's produced, there's no way that they can make good decisions on it. And then the other part I mentioned earlier, there's the financial viability part of it. That's businesses. There's the environmental side of it, which is kind of, we understand and we talk about a lot of times, but really it's the social side. And for us organizationally, and I know Fresh Farm has this aspect as well, the equity side of it is really important too. And so this whole aspect of making sure that it's not available, that sustainable food isn't only available to people who can afford it or that can afford to spend extra money. So the idea is that in order for it to be truly sustainable, we can't have this system that leaves part of society behind.
No, that's correct. And that actually brings up a very, very important point, is what are the big issues with the equity? So pricing is a huge issue, we know that, but how can we get a handle on that?
Well, a program that we are running in DC that I think does a really good job of kind of trying to address that. So another big area is transportation, or barrier is transportation. So in DC, we are working on utilizing our farmers markets as pop-up food hubs, which is just basically leveraging the fact that the farmer's already at the market to put together CSA shares, CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, and it's just a box of fresh produce that you get from your farmer every week at a discount because you have paid into a program with them. So
the farmer puts the box together?
Actually, our team puts it together. We coordinate with the farmers, figure out how much they have of everything, put together an order, and then they bring it to us because they're already coming to the market. And the beauty of that is that oftentimes it's difficult to establish farmers markets in underserved communities. So if we can guarantee them they're going to make an extra $1,000 when they show up in their CSA, that makes the market more viable.
Why is it more difficult to have a farmers market in communities that are underserved?
Financial reasons. I mean, local food is more expensive. I mean, it's more expensive to shop at the farmers market, and so that cost barrier.
So how can someone tap into that program?
So So what we've done to make it more accessible is, so we have the CSA program we provide, which is already a pretty decent discount for local food, and then we
can
subsidize
you do this
it.
as an individual?
You can, yeah. Anybody can participate. Yeah, this is for individuals.
And the boxes, are those, what's usually in a box like this? Just to give us an idea.
Maybe 7 different types of fruits and vegetables, maybe that big, and yeah. Serves maybe 2 to 4 people.
Okay.
There's different options. But the beauty of it is, well, first of all, we subsidize it with existing government programs like WIC and SNAP. And we also have money to match for the SNAP program, so we're able to subsidize it even more. So they're actually able to use those benefits to purchase this already discounted box. So they can sometimes get like a whole family's worth of food for like $8, and it's all local and it's fresh,
really
and all the
important,
money's going to the farmers, which is beautiful. And then the other thing that we've done to kind of break down those food access barriers is actually delivering directly to neighborhood centers. So like we'll coordinate with a community center, with a church, with a school, and we'll make them a CSA drop point, which is basically we drop off the boxes and the families are able to come to that community center and pick up their produce rather than having to, schlep on the bus with their 4 kids and, a cart and trying to carry all that heavy produce. It just makes it easier for families that are already, busy and overworked, and, anything we can do to make it easier.
So it's really important to understand the 3 letters, the CSA. Yeah. So this is something to, well, seriously, so people need to look out for, and they know this is what's out there.
Yeah, and the whole thing behind that is that you're helping the farmer by helping them invest early in the season with an investment in their farm and their seeds, and all the farmers have to do a whole bunch of investment up front before they get anything back. So basically you help them and then they give you a discount. So it's a good,
so it's a win-win for both.
It is,
for farmers to really work with that, and then also for underserved communities to really get healthy food in a more affordable range.
Yeah, it's a great way to get a good deal on local
Is this
produce.
picking up, like in underserved communities? Are people really making use of this?
Oh yeah.
Do they know
in
about
DC,
that?
it's really popular. We've been growing super quickly. So
well, that's kind of congruent with the mobile
I don't
market.
have the stats offhand. I don't work on that program specifically, but I want to say we worked with 50 community centers in DC or something like that. It's a lot.
So price is a major issue. We talked about education also is a major issue. Do you actually know, I know you have people come to Arcadia who do classes on that. What is sort of the general knowledge base that people come with?
It really depends. Part of it is not always been equal between, like, it depends on where somebody grew up and the environment that they lived in. But in general, most people don't really have a good grasp of where their food comes from on a regular basis.
And this is more than location, right?
Right. I mean, we're talking like things coming out of the ground or eggs coming from a chicken or that type of thing. And so it's really important that people just have that basic understanding. And beyond that, it's kind of, they need to know where it's coming from, but they also need to know what to do with it. And so there are these issues around things like affordability and access. There are some areas where there's just no food retail. You can't go buy like a whole tomato somewhere, or you can't go buy fresh vegetables. And so there have been places that have been left behind. And so the idea is that it's both access, it's affordability, and then there's this level of kind of like usability when it comes to food. And I think a lot of people, it's kind of like if you just handed somebody a box of vegetables, they can do something with it, but unless it's all stuff like grapes and cherry tomatoes and things that you can just kind of pop in your mouth and wash and eat them, like you need to be able to prepare them and do that stuff. And so
cooking is the second part that
cooking and the
people don't know
ability
how to do, and that's a problem.
Utensils, stove.
Right.
And so that's a big part of the process, is kind of working with communities to do nutritional educational programming, culinary education. There's kind of parts of society that have been left behind when they started not doing home economics classes in high school, and kids come out of school and they don't know actually how to cook something. And so we do programming, Fresh Farm does programming. There are great programs where chefs go out to farmers markets in the area and do cooking demonstrations and teach people how to cook. And so I think that's a big part of it.
That's something for everyone, really.
Yep, and it's wonderful. It's a great way to do it. We find that in general, focus most of our programming on children. And part of that is because if you can convince a kid to eat fruits and vegetables, odds are they'll get their parents to do it too. And so you're basically changing a whole family by working with one child. And what we find is that all you have to do is take them out and show them where the food comes from. When you pull a carrot out of the ground, the kids are so eager to eat it right then. And I mean, my daughter's doesn't necessarily eat a lot of fresh vegetables, or she didn't all the time, but when I had a garden in my backyard, if we'd go out and we'd pick a cherry tomato, she doesn't like tomatoes, but she'll eat cherry tomatoes right off of the plant if I give it to her. So part of it is knowing where it's coming from and really being comfortable with it. And it creates this sense of worth, I think, that kids and people will assign to their food. And it's really, we've gotten to the point so much in society that we look at food as being kind of cheap and just kind of convenient. And we pay a premium for it to be convenient. And in reality, it's something that we need to have a better understanding of. Where is it coming from and what's its value? And it really has a value because it's growing outside and because it's so hard to grow food that we really should be placing a higher value on it in terms of the importance of it in our lives.
Yeah, and particularly when you look at urbanization, I mean, we live in a growing mega city, Washington, Baltimore, best example. As we get more and more people even into the cities, and you know, the statistics are that by 2050, 2/3 of the world's population are going to likely living in cities. So with that trend that people already do not know where the food is coming from and have a really big disconnect, I find that very concerning. So we need to talk about, you know, how can we reestablish the connection of the people with the food and with nature? Do you think gardening, how many people, or do you have a sense of how many people actually use something to grow in their garden if they have a little bit of land, even if it's just something small?
I don't know that there's any solid data on it. There's a ton of value in it. And Arcadia and the Food Council have really spent a lot of time over the past number of years really looking at kind of this issue. And Fairfax County, to their credit, this past year passed some great zoning adjustments and changes to the zoning regulations that allow people to grow food in their front yards and are really promoting the idea of people growing their own food. And I think when it comes to issues like urban agriculture in large cities, I'm not sure about the long-term ability to really produce everybody's calorie needs that way, but I think urban agriculture is an incredible opportunity for people to understand where their food's coming from. And so we really find community gardens, backyard gardens, school gardens are tremendously important. And we've spent the last couple of years in the Route 1 corridor really helping put in community gardens and working with schools to get their garden programs up and running. And I think that's a real growth opportunity. And if people have a chance to go work with a local community garden and volunteer their time or even help start community gardens, I know that county zoning changes also really make it easier to start community gardens as well.
Because I was going to say, how hard is it to start a community garden?
It depends on if you own the land or not. If you own the land, it's not very hard at all. If you don't own the land, it can be a lot harder.
So what do you need for permissions, for example, in Fairfax County? Do you know?
So there's a permitting process. You actually go through a couple steps to make sure that the garden you're putting in won't damage the surrounding environment. So there's
damage in what way?
So they want to make sure to control things like erosion and that type of thing. And so they want to make sure that whatever you're putting in is safe in that regard. And so there's a couple steps you can follow, but it's not incredibly arduous. It's possible to do it.
So it is possible?
Yep, absolutely.
Can you tell us how long roughly it takes?
Oh, you can do it. If you want to plan to do it, if you give yourself 6 months, you can make it happen.
So we're going right into the break. We continue our conversation about sustainable food.
During high school, I hung with the wrong crowd and I never graduated.
I helped Santiago in many different ways, like all fathers do, because he always wanted to go to college.
I felt a little embarrassed to come back to school, but eventually, once I came here, I knew that it's for a bigger goal.
He was very dedicated, hardworking. He connected with his teachers, he connected with other students. That was one of the key reasons why he was able to keep forging ahead.
It was amazing to see him graduate. This was one thing that meant so much to him, and of course, it meant so much to us too.
With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed. That support is everything.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Dad,
Just 1 minute, okay?
hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back to Smart Sustainability. Tonight we talk about access to sustainable food networks, and we continue in this last segment with challenges and opportunities that are kind of coming up and are in the way that we need to address. I do want to talk a little bit about the big elephants in the way. Let's start with the challenges first. So before, in the last segment, we talked about equity. We talked about education being an issue, affordability being an issue, but there's a lot of programs that kind of help with accessibility. What are other challenges in terms of building sustainable food networks or growing sustainable food in our area? And then also, is that applicable to other locations in the US as well? Let's start with our area first.
Well, we're definitely, I'd say, missing a lot of the just basic infrastructure for distribution of food. So,
like what?
Trucks, refrigerated trucks are very expensive. Like if we were, even just for our program, we go with the pop-up model because it allows us to be more nimble and not have to have all that infrastructure.
Yeah.
But so that's
when
a big
you say
barrier
the
to growth.
pop-up model, explain to us a little bit what you mean by the pop-up model.
Oh, sorry. I had referred to it a little earlier. That's
Yes.
our CSA program. And it's called Pop-Up Food Hub because it's leveraging the farmers market being there and kind of creating a mini food
So
hub
you
that
just
day.
go there and bring the crates.
Exactly.
basically.
But we coordinate ahead of time with the farmers so that
Yes.
we already know that they're going to bring what we
Yes.
need and they can plan on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some of the challenges, so we talked about trucks, so infrastructure.
Yeah, storage, cold storage. Just our whole food system is not centralized regionally. It's, a national, things are, all the apples at your Giant are probably coming from Washington or California. That's just normal. It's just not even part of our infrastructure for our, big retailers to
So
kind
we're
of work
talking
locally.
ecosystem at this point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the whole system, pretty much.
So what would need to happen to make this sort of part of our ecosystem?
A lot more farmers markets and pop-up food hubs. And other players coming into the game that are, this probably wouldn't be what our organization does, but somebody coming into the game to kind of coordinate between those larger institutions and the farmers, somebody to bring them together. For example, the public schools have been, in Fairfax County, really supportive and interested in getting local foods into the schools, and they started with their salad bar programs. And so
That's right.
back years ago when this started, I was approached by the coordinator of that program. Please help connect me to these local farmers. There's nobody to, there just wasn't any infrastructure. They didn't have anybody to go to help coordinate that process and to help make, much less the logistics of actually transporting and delivering the food and payments. And there's also institutionally, like at the public schools, for example, they have contracts already with different distributors. Those distributors obviously don't want to be displaced. So, there's existing infrastructure that, we have to haggle with and figure out.
Yep.
Are there any other
The
big challenge? I'm sure there are a
well,
lot of
the
other big
infrastructure
challenges.
challenge, I think, is huge. The things like loss of farmland. There's fewer and fewer farms within a reasonable distance of Washington,
Which for a
D.C.
mega city is huge
Right.
because more and more people are moving out, the region is growing, it's going to be more and more developed. So I was going to say, when you said like with the infrastructure, how much farmland do we really have left?
It exists. The real challenge is, though, there have been some incredible studies done, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's one of those things where if all major food distribution chains were shut down, like we really don't produce enough food in this region to feed the people in this area for more than a week or two. And it's one of those things where we need to, we've become so reliant on food from longer distances. And you know, there are certain things that won't grow here, so I'm not going to tell people stop eating citrus fruit because we can't grow it here. But and we just don't produce enough locally to do it. And so part of it is the land base, having enough farms and preserving them. Part of it is turning productive land into agricultural land. There's a lot of space that sits unused, and it's kind of open and used for other things. I think there's a lack of farmers out there.
Yeah, I was going to say farmers too. Like, where do you find the people who are willing to actually run a farm? Although I thought there was a trend that was kind of spiking up lately, no?
It's a little bit, I think. It seems like there's younger people getting
in Fairfax County, like, there's not a lot within, our area, but right around us, DC, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, I mean, we get a good amount. It's actually pretty competitive for farmers to get into our markets. Like, I'd say if we had more opportunities for farmers, we'd probably
have more?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think they're out there.
It's an opportunity issue.
It's part of it is traditionally farmers kind of grew up in farm families, and it was kind of passed along. Now, over the past, I'd say 20, 30 years, it's been a real shift more toward people getting in agriculture after doing something else. And so we work with veterans, other people work with the immigrant community or the refugee community, and other people a lot of programs in the area. There's a number of them that really support anybody who wants to get into agriculture and do training and kind of apprenticeship programs. So you have people who went to college and studied something completely unrelated to agriculture who realize that they want to do something that brings a different meaning to their life, and so they end up in that. And so I think that's a huge aspect of it. I think the market is definitely pushing people towards more local food and more sustainable food.
Because demand is definitely there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see it in the grocery stores now more than you used to be able to see it. And the large food distributors are all starting to carry local food. And there's some great organizations. Kind of the local food hub in Virginia has really stepped up, and they buy food from local farmers and sustainably grown, and they have transportation. They bring it into Washington, D.C., and they actually are the mobile market program. Our mobile market program gets a lot of food from them, and they help transport food, I know, for some of your other programs as well. And so it's a way to bring food from further out that the farmers just don't have the time to drive it in themselves. So that's part of the infrastructure, is these kind of middlemen who can kind of go and bring the food in and distribute and transport it and do that side of it. And I think those are all a big aspect. I think production's a big part too. The processing facilities, this used to be a huge processing area, and it's just not anymore.
Our area here?
Yeah, especially in Maryland. Once you got over into Maryland, there was a lot of kind of production and canning and other processing facilities that don't exist anymore. And so there's a big push. It would be great to see those types of businesses coming back into the area. You see it in small scale, like Frontier Kitchen and their incubator program, and a lot of these incubator kitchens where people are learning how to do this on a small scale. But there's opportunity and space for a lot more of it. Pretty much the vast majority of food production that goes on is directly cooking it and selling it to customers through restaurants or other kind of food businesses. But this idea of kind of processing and canning and selling it would be a great step in the right direction, because it would make local food less of a seasonal thing and more of a year-round thing too.
Now let me ask you something though. In this day and age, there are many people who don't want to become full-time farmers. But is it inconceivable to say, you have a daytime job and you do something, you grow something specific on your farm that you then could actually bring to a point of delivery and sell that? So you're kind of like don't want to say hobby farmer, but you take it to the next level, so it's almost like a side business?
Yep. Unfortunately, that's the case for most farmers anyway.
I was just about to say, sounds like, yeah, most of the farmers market vendors, I'd say, are
they do that,
or at least in the beginning. When people get into it, a lot of times they're kind of straddling two worlds before they go all in.
Yep.
Although not usually for farming, usually more for the other businesses. Like if you're making, value-added product like an empanada or something like that, you might have a full-time job, and then you also do that.
Or a lot of times, for farmers to be successful, a lot of times there has to be a spouse or a partner that has another job
with benefits and health insurance and all this stuff. Yeah,
but
all
those
that's kind
types
of like
of
in
things.
almost every business nowadays. That you need one who kind of has the safety net, and the other one who kind of is the risk taker.
Absolutely, and I think we talked about some of the programs that we're involved with, and kind of the matching programs, and these programs have been developed to really support lower income residents buying food at markets and in other locations. And Washington DC has a great program called Produce Plus, where it's a city-funded program where they're essentially providing a food voucher that goes out for anybody who is unemployed or a senior citizen. The city does it.
So where would you go as a user? You would go and apply to the city for it?
If you already qualify through these other programs, there are different locations and organizations that will help sign you up for these benefits. And up until this year, it's all been distributed at the market. And so you could go to a market, you receive a voucher, and you can go use it with the different farmers at that market. And so people were able to get $10 or $20 worth of fresh produce every week throughout the market season. And it would be great to see something like that happen in Fairfax County, something that the county is really getting behind and supporting to make sure that people get out there. Because it not only benefits the consumer, it also benefits the farmer itself, because it raises the amount of food that they're selling at market.
And we do not have this at this point.
We don't. We have
Is there
a program
on the line, so to speak?
It's something the Food Council has been talking about, trying to do something. One of the challenges, Virginia only on a statewide effort really has one program where you can accept SNAP benefits at farmers markets. You can actually, in general across the state, you can accept some of the other food benefit programs that you can in Washington, D.C. There's a few USDA programs that are farmers market specific, and you haven't been able to utilize those at farmers markets in Virginia for, it's been about 10 years or so since that's been available.
I want to talk about one more point before we're at the end of the program, and we're almost there. We talk about sustainable food networks. So networks to me is always about collaboration, cooperation. Where are we? I know you two cooperate, like I think your organizations are collaborating. Where do we need to collaborate more of going forward? Where do you see the biggest potential?
Do you want to take that?
Sure. I mean,
it's got to be quick. We got less than a minute.
That's always hard for me. So, I mean, for the Food Council, I would say that is a really good example of for
coming
example,
together.
Yeah. So we've got somebody from public transportation there, so we're able to maybe talk to them and try to overcome the barrier of accessing the SNAP program at market by seeing how we can, make the bus stops or, just what we can do to offer transportation to people. So having those players in the room, I think it helps prevent the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing, and making sure that we're all, because we're often working on the same thing, so making sure we're all working together and not duplicating each other's efforts too.
And it also breaks down the silos, it sounds like.
Definitely.
That's right. Well, this is it for tonight. We'll have a follow-up episode with retail representatives and other stakeholders soon, and you can see more information on our Facebook. You have a good night.
Thanks.